My gold-digger wife bled me dry for over 10 years, so I finally snapped and served her with divorce papers. She started harassing me and stalking me, and left me with no choice but to do the extreme, plus 3 updates. When I was getting married to my wife, something in my gut told me not to do it, but she pressured me until I gave in. Well, the moment the ink was dry on our marriage license, things went south. Just a few months into marriage, she went behind my back, took out most of my savings, and put down a deposit on a fancy apartment I didn't want. When I found out, and was rightfully angry, she said I was just her provider, and needed to accept that her word goes over mine. I remember surprising her with a Michael Kors handbag, and she complained that the color didn't match her phone case. I am a doctor and make good money, but have less than $2,000 in savings. We don't have intimacy anymore, nor do we laugh. We don't talk about anything but money. We have no kids. She said she wanted them before marriage, then changed her mind. And our home has no warmth or joy. I hate it. I hate her. I've rented an apartment across town, and there's a stack of IKEA furniture waiting for me there. The lease is up on the Mercedes she made me lease, and I'm replacing it with a used Prius. I'm telling her tomorrow I want a divorce. I know she will cry and demand we try therapy, but I don't want that. This was never right, and I'm only sorry it took me so long to realize it. Update 1. Usually when I wake up, I go for a run or a bike ride. While I'm gone, my wife gets up, gets dressed, gets a smoothie going, whatever. This morning I paced the kitchen, rehearsing what I had to tell her over and over again. When she finally came down, I felt oddly calm. I wasn't expecting to be panicked exactly, but apprehensive at least. I told her I needed to speak to her. She gave me an and didn't look up from the coffee machine. Then I just came out with it. I told her I was leaving and that I wanted a divorce, that we hadn't been happy in a long time, and I felt as though she didn't care about me or my emotional needs. Pretty much instantly, the gaslighting began. She cried that I never get her flowers anymore, that I don't do enough to support her, that I don't care if she's happy. I brought up the fact that I suggested therapy over a year ago, and she agreed, but then made excuse after excuse not to go. I brought up the times she completely ignored the budget we worked on. I told her how it made me feel when she dismissed me when I tried to tell her how I was feeling. The crying escalated then, along with begging for a chance to make this right, to go to therapy, that she would be better. It went like I thought it would go, and I felt absolutely nothing. I don't care anymore. Whatever I once felt for her is just dead and gone, and she might as well have been a second cousin sobbing about her marriage for all the connection I felt to it. Eventually, I just got fed up and walked out. She has been blowing up my phone with calls and texts, which range from angry to begging to threatening. I started getting calls from her mother and mine too by the end of the day. I spoke briefly to my mother and calmly explained that I was sorry she didn't hear it from me, but my wife was sucking me dry financially and emotionally, and I couldn't do it anymore. She was surprisingly supportive. I'm currently in my new apartment. I unrolled the mattress in a box and went to Walmart for sheets. I ate Thai takeout for dinner at the kitchen counter and watched a bit of Netflix on my computer. I have everything I need for the next few days. My wife is getting served tomorrow. I keep expecting the sadness to set in, but it hasn't. I feel like 1,000 pounds are off my shoulders, and suddenly my future is full of possibilities. I'm going to travel. I'm going to try new restaurants. I'm going to take a job that actually makes me happy and proud instead of rich. Much to the internet's chagrin, I will ask out the barista that keeps hitting on me, because despite unpopular opinion, she is both age appropriate, it's her family's business, and I do have the interpersonal skills to recognize the difference between customer service and actual connection. Cheers, everyone. I'm going to have a beer and then take a walk around my new neighborhood. Update 2. I woke up in my new apartment. I felt like I had more room to breathe. The sun was shining through the window, and I didn't feel that familiar dread that I used to. I got dressed, just jeans and a t-shirt, and decided to go to that little cafe around the corner. It's the one with the wooden tables outside and the big glass windows. I thought it would be nice to have breakfast there and maybe see if the barista was working. When I walked in, the smell of fresh coffee hit me. It was warm and comforting. I saw the barista right away. Her name tag said Amy, and she smiled at me like she always did. I stood in line, ordered my muffin and coffee, and sat down to eat. A few minutes later, I heard a familiar voice, however. I turned around, and there she was, my wife. She looked furious. Her eyes were red like she'd been crying all night, and her hair was messy. People in the cafe were staring at her. My heart sank. This was going to be bad. "There you are," she yelled, marching right up to me. "I've been looking for you everywhere." "Amanda, what are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. I noticed Amy glance over, her smile fading as she handed a drink to another customer. "What am I doing here?" she shouted. "I should be asking you that. You left me, and now you're just out here getting coffee like nothing happened?" People were definitely staring now. I felt embarrassed and angry at the same time. I didn't want to do this here, not in front of everyone, and especially not in front of Amy. Amanda, I'm just getting a coffee, I said, trying to keep my voice low. Can we talk about this later? No, we can't talk about this later, she yelled, her voice getting even louder. You're my husband. You're supposed to be at home with me, not here, flirting with some barista like a creep. I glanced at Amy, who looked uncomfortable. I felt like crawling into a hole. Amanda, stop, I said, still trying to keep calm. I'm not doing this right now. Oh, you're not doing this right now? She mocked, crossing her arms. Well, too bad, because I'm doing this right now. You owe me an explanation, and you're going to give it to me. I looked around the cafe. Everyone was watching. I could feel their eyes on us, and it made my skin crawl. I just wanted to get out of there. I'm not going back with you, I said firmly. I'm done. Her face twisted in anger. You think you're done? You don't get to just leave me like this. She reached out and grabbed my arm, trying to pull me towards the door. You're coming home, and we're going to fix this. I pulled my arm away. No, I'm not, I said, my voice steady. It's over, Amanda. I'm not coming back. She looked like she was going to explode. You're going to regret this, she hissed. You're nothing without me, you hear me? Nothing. I didn't say anything. I just turned and walked out of the cafe, my coffee and muffin forgotten on the counter. I heard her footsteps behind me, and I knew she wasn't going to give up that easily. I made my way to my car, and she was right behind me, still yelling. Get in your car and go home, I said, turning to face her. You're making a scene. I don't care, she screamed. You're my husband. You're supposed to be with me. I'm not your anything anymore, I said, opening my car door. Just go. I got in the car and started the engine. She was still standing there, her face twisted with anger and hurt. I backed out of the parking spot and drove off, but I noticed in my rearview mirror that she was getting into her car too. I took a deep breath and tried to calm down. I couldn't go back to the apartment if she was following me. I needed to lose her. I drove through a few side streets trying to think. I could see her car behind me, not too far back. My heart was pounding, and my hands were sweaty on the steering wheel. I turned down another street, then another, trying to put some distance between us. I took a sharp left and sped up a bit, hoping she wouldn't keep up. After a few minutes, I didn't see her car anymore. I took a few more turns, just to be safe, and finally made my way back to my new place. My hands were shaking as I parked and got out. I hurried up the stairs and into my apartment, locking the door behind me. I stood there for a minute, catching my breath. I felt drained. This was only the beginning, I knew that, but I also knew I couldn't go back. Not now, not ever. I took a deep breath and tried to calm myself down. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel sad. I just felt relieved. I was free. Update 3. After I managed to lose her that day, I thought maybe, just maybe, she would give up and let things go. I was wrong. It didn't take long for her to figure out where I was living. I'm not sure how she did it. Maybe she followed me one day without me noticing, or maybe she asked around. Either way, she found my new address. The first sign was when I came home from work a few days later and saw a pile of mail on my doorstep. There were bills and a few random advertisements, but the odd thing was that they were all addressed to Amanda McCoy. She had forwarded her mail to my new place. At first, I thought it was a mistake, maybe some kind of mix-up at the post office. I called her to ask why her mail was showing up at my place. She laughed. "Oh, I just thought it would be easier for you to pay my bills if they were delivered straight to you," she said, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I hung up and blocked her number. I threw her mail away, but it kept coming. She was making it clear she knew where I lived. Then, one night, I came home and found her sitting on the steps outside my building. I tried to ignore her and walk past, but she stood up and blocked my way. "You think you can just leave me?" she said, her voice low and cold. "You think you can just move on like I don't exist? I'm not doing this, Amanda. Go home," I said, trying to stay calm. "This is my home," she snapped. "I'm your wife. You don't get to run away from me." I pushed past her, and she started screaming, calling me every name in the book. Neighbors peeked out their windows, and I could feel their eyes on us. She was making a scene again, just like at the cafe. I went inside and locked the door, my hands shaking. She pounded on the door for what felt like hours, shouting that I owed her, that I had ruined her life. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, she was gone. They told me to get a restraining order, but I wasn't sure if I was ready to take that step. I just hoped she would calm down. When the divorce proceedings started, things got even worse. She was vile, and I saw a side of her I didn't think was possible. We had agreed to try and handle things through mediation, but every meeting turned into a shouting match. She would show up late, looking disheveled and angry. She would interrupt me, call me names, and accuse me of being abusive, of cheating, of every horrible thing you could imagine. At one point, during a particularly nasty meeting, she leaned over the table and said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "You know, I've been thinking a lot about that vacation we took to Mexico. Do you remember that night when you got drunk and hit me?" I was stunned. I had never laid a hand on her. "What the hell are you talking about, Amanda?" I said, my voice shaking. "Oh, you don't remember? How convenient." She turned to the mediator and smiled sweetly. He has a history of violence. I'm just saying, I don't feel safe. The mediator looked uncomfortable, and I felt like I was in a nightmare. She was lying, outright lying, and there was nothing I could do to prove otherwise. I knew then that she was going to drag this out, make it as painful as possible. It wasn't about the money or the apartment or anything else. It was about control. She couldn't stand that I had taken any of it back. The worst part was when she started showing up at my job. I work at a hospital, and she would come in pretending to be a patient, making a scene in the waiting room until security had to escort her out. She called my boss, telling him I was mentally unstable, that I had been abusing drugs, that I was a danger to my patients. None of it was true, but it was humiliating, and I could tell people were starting to talk. My boss called me in one day, concerned. He was kind about it, but he said I needed to get things under control. I knew he was right. The final straw came after the divorce was finalized. I thought things would calm down once the papers were signed, but I was wrong again. One night, I came home late and found her car parked outside my building. She was just sitting there, staring up at my window. I tried to ignore it, went inside, and shut the blinds, but it kept happening. Every night, she would be there, just sitting in her car, watching. Then, one night, I came home, and she wasn't in her car. I felt a weird sense of relief. Maybe she had finally given up. But when I opened my door, I found her sitting on my couch. I froze. I had no idea how she had gotten in. My heart was pounding in my chest. "What are you doing here?" I demanded. She stood up, a slow, eerie smile spreading across her face. "I still have a key, remember? I had forgotten to change the locks. Stupid." I backed up towards the door, ready to call the police. "Get out," I said, trying to sound firm. She just laughed. "Oh, come on. You don't mean that. We're meant to be together, you know that. You can't just run away from me. I'm serious, Amanda. Get out, or I'm calling the cops." She shrugged, then walked past me, her shoulder brushing mine as she went to the door. "Fine, I'll go. But this isn't over. Not by a long shot." I watched her leave, my hands shaking. I called the locksmith that night and changed the locks. The next morning, I went to the courthouse and filed for a restraining order. I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't live my life looking over my shoulder, waiting for her to show up and ruin everything again. The process was long and draining. I had to document everything, every phone call, every visit, every time she showed up at my job. When we finally went to court, she sat there, acting like the victim, crying and saying she just wanted to work things out. But the judge saw through it. The order was granted, and she was barred from coming near me, my home, or my work. I thought that would be the end of it, but even now, I still see her car sometimes, parked down the street from my building or outside my office. She's careful not to get too close, not to break the restraining order, but I know she's still watching, waiting. It's a constant, nagging presence in the back of my mind, and I hate it. I hate that she still has this hold on me, even after everything. But I'm trying to move on. I've started going out again, seeing friends, trying to rebuild my life. It's not easy, and some days it feels like I'm just going through the motions, but I'm free, and that's something. I just have to keep reminding myself of that. I'm free.